Hello fellow book nerds, this is Gabby and let me help you with your Goodreads goal. So it's that wonderful time of the year when all of us scramble to get to our Goodreads goal because it is December, the last month. We want to have that nice round figure and just say we smashed the year with our reading. And some of us might be struggling a little bit. Life gets in the way. We had a pandemic going on, so sometimes we need a bit of help. So I am here to help you out because I have 11 very short books and I've got them for you because I want to help you with your Goodreads goal. So if you read all of these very short, very easy books, I'm sure you can get to that Goodreads goal, smash it out of the park and say that you're the best reader in the universe. Not that it's a contest, but at the same time, do you want to lose? Okay, by the way, that was a joke. Okay, let's kick it off with our first book, and I'm gonna preface this with, unless you like erotica, you're probably not gonna like this. But the rest of them aren't like this, it's just this first one. So I've ordered them by the size of the book, aka page number, so that's why this very special book made it first. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think everyone will. So this is Ember by Betty Sharp. So this book has 94 pages and it's the shortest one on this list, and it's very easy to read because it's kind of a Cinderella retelling, but in this world Prince Charming has a curse put on him and everyone that sees Prince Charming has to fall in love with him. So his face kind of blends to look what's most appealing to you, and everyone absolutely has to love him because of the curse. Then we have our main character whose name I don't remember, and she is a witch. So she put kind of like a counter spell on herself so that she doesn't fall in love with the prince, because the curse doesn't really affect her, so she can actually see his real face. And what do you know, if everyone falls at your feet your whole life, you actually don't want that, and you hope that you find someone who doesn't. So the prince is very attracted to her. This is a very 18 plus mature book with a lot of sex scenes, so please don't pick it up unless you're overage and you enjoy this kind of thing. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was the grand old time. I read it in like one sitting. It's 94 pages. It's tiny. You know, this first one you can take it or leave it. The rest are a bit more palatable for everyone's taste, but this one I really enjoyed it. The next book is Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. This one is 96 pages, so just tiny little bit longer, and this book is a sci-fi novel actually. We follow Binti, who's from this tribe on Earth. It's a very traditional tribe, come from Africa I believe, and they have very specific traditions, and no one from her tribe has ever before gotten into this very prestigious intergalactic school that Binti got into. So we follow Binti on the ship that is about to take her to the planet where she's gonna go to school. It's a very short but really impactful read. I thought it punched a lot of interesting themes and a lot of interesting motives into a very short run. So I would highly recommend it, especially if you're into sci-fi. It talks about culture, it talks about leaving your home. It's all about living in harmony with people different than you, I would say. But I don't want to give away too much. Like I said, it's 96 pages. I think I read it, I did read it as an audiobook, and it was a very short read, and I immensely enjoyed it. It's a whole series, so if you read one, you can always continue and just read the other really short sequels. I haven't yet, but I will. But I would highly recommend this one. It's really lovely. It's by a black author, and I think it's just, you know, if you want to also, if you feel like you didn't read enough from people of color, read Binti and then be better next year. Next up we have The Test by Sylvie Nouvelle. So this one is 108 pages. It's a very interesting book. Again, I read it as an audiobook, but I believe it'll be a very short read nevertheless. We follow our main character who goes to take his citizenship test for the United Kingdom. So, you know, when you want to become an official resident and you want to be British, in fairness, because you get a passport and a British nationality, you have to take this test, and it's kind of set in a futuristic England. It has so much interesting commentary on what's happening in England with Brexit and attitudes towards foreigners, but also how what can break us as humans. Such a short book, but such a powerful read. I absolutely did not expect the twist of the story, and I don't want to tell it to you. I would just say, believe me, trust me, it's worth it. It's really amazing. I would really highly recommend it. It's a very powerful read, but in a short, sweet package that will keep, like, I'm still sometimes thinking about it, and I read it like half a year ago, or maybe even more, maybe like a year ago at this point, and I really absolutely loved it and would highly recommend it. Next up, we have a book that I read very recently, and it is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nhi Vo. This one sits at 112 pages, and I read it for my $1,000 readathon, which I'm going to link if you wanted to check it out. But this book is absolutely, again, so amazing and so easy to read and short. So we follow a cleric. The cleric's pronouns are they and them. So we follow them as they meet this old woman who used to be a handmaiden for the Empress of Salt and Fortune, and we hear her retell the story of the Empress. She went down in history as a very prominent figure, and this woman had the privilege, or maybe not a privilege, of knowing this Empress from when she became the Empress. And it's a very powerful story with a lot of important themes. It has LGBTQ characters. Again, so short, but so to the point. I feel like sometimes you read a 400-page book and you don't get as much value as you get from some of these shorter stories. I absolutely loved it. The sequel's coming out very soon, so I'm gonna pick it up. But I think it's a really important story. Again, the author is Asian, so and the book itself has so much diversity in terms of gender as well as sexuality, so I would highly recommend, and I would definitely also continue with the series. I mean, I assume the second one is going to be just as amazing, but the writing was impeccable. So next up is a little bit of a recommendation of a series. So I'm sure you know, but the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire is a big hit on BookTube. Everyone loves them. These are very short stories. I think the first one is 173 pages, so a little bit on the bigger side than the previous ones, but still really, really easy to read. So if you don't know Wayward Children series, we follow children who have gone to different worlds through portals, and then they came back to our world. And these worlds they went to were very bizarre, they were either very logical, very nonsensical, and they just played by completely different rules than our own world. And it's kind of these children having to come to terms with what happened to them, but also the fact that they can't be there anymore, the fact that they have to live in this boring old world. It's really kind of like if Alice from Wonderland went to Wonderland and then came back and we had a book about that. How does she cope with it all, although they know that it wasn't a dream? And each book it's kind of like an anthology series, so each book we follow a different set of characters, some of them intertwine. I would say some of the later books in the series, you do have to read the previous ones for it to make complete sense, but first couple ones are probably quite standalone. They all do weave with each other quite nicely, even if they seem standalone, so I would still maybe read the whole series. But my favorite book was Down Among Sticks and Bones, and that one's 180 something pages. Well, if you can just read one, I would read that one instead, because I thought it was so much better than the first one. First one was right, I didn't absolutely love it. This series, because it's an anthology, I feel like it's a big hit and miss. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it. Well, I never really hated it, but sometimes I find it really boring, and sometimes I find it really, really engaging. So it depends which world we kind of end up in, but I still think the whole series is a pretty good bet if you want a really nice, quick read and something very whimsical. Each of them are so different that it's very interesting to read. Alright, the next book is Pet by Akweke Emezi, and I read this quite recently. It's a really good story, but I would put some content warning for sexual abuse, especially of minors, so I would put that disclaimer there. But like I said, it's a really good story. I actually thought it was middle grade, but it's the author's first venture into YA. It definitely reads a bit more younger YA, but nothing wrong with that. It was a really, really good story. And the story is that the main character, who's a little black transgender girl, she lives in this city that is considered perfect, rid of any kind of monsters, deviants, anyone bad basically is gone, and they think that everything is perfect. One day though, the main girl releases a monster from her mother's painting, and this monster says that he's not the monster, his name's Pet, and he's here to hunt down a real monster who's threatening a really good friend of the main character. So the main character has to kind of deal with the fact that the world might not be as perfect as she was told, and there still might be some evil lurking around. The story, like I said, are really diverse. The main character is transgender, but there's also a lot of LGBTQ representation, there's a polyamorous relationship, and everyone's really, really open, and this world is like really progressive. And so in that sense, there was a lot of characters from different diasporas, which was really interesting. The story, like I said, it's quite short, so I didn't actually tell you, it's 208 pages, which I think is still on the very short side of a book, at least of what I read. They're all like 500 pages. But this was a quick read. The writing is really big as well, and it's really easy to digest, but you do need to sit with it a little bit. It definitely had a big impact. It definitely talks about some really important but difficult topics. Like I said, be aware of the content warning, please. It's never explicitly discussed, but it's implied and it's talked about in a sense, so please be careful. But if you feel able to and you want to read this, I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's such a good book. It kind of reminds me of A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Not in a, oh my god, they're the same story. More like it's about children coming to terms with really dark and serious topics with a bit of whimsy. Maybe whimsy is not the word, but if you know A Monster Calls, he also has a monster that comes to him at night and tells him stories, and that helps him process some really difficult things happening in his life. So if you enjoyed one, I would really, really highly recommend it. And even if you didn't, I mean, this is a different story, so you might still enjoy it. But it was really impactful, really great, and like I said, a quick read. Next up, we have My Sister, the Serial Killer by Oyinka Braithwaite. And this book is 226 pages. Again, I read it probably in a day, so you definitely can read it. And this one is interesting. It's, I think it's set in Nigeria, but I don't want to lie to you. I've read it quite a while ago. But we follow two sisters. One of them is a serial killer, and the other one has to clean up after her. So the main character's sister, somehow all of her boyfriends just end up dead. And then the main character kind of feels obliged to help her sister sort it out. So it's kind of a story about these two women and the main character really coming in to herself, because her sister actually has an eye on a guy that she likes, and she's like, no, don't let them date because she's definitely gonna murder him. They're at this point right now. So the book is kind of a dark comedy. I wouldn't say it was my absolute favorite book I ever read, but I still really, really enjoyed it. I think it had some interesting inside knowledge there. I think it could have done with being a little bit longer actually, but it's not, so you can read it quite easily, very quickly. And if you're in the mood for like a dark humor story from like a culture that you don't get to read from as much if you're like a Western reader, then I would definitely recommend it. Next up, we have Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. So Horror Store sits at 248 pages, but trust me, you can read this in one go because it is set in a knockoff IKEA store, and it is made like an IKEA catalog. It is such a brilliant book. I think I read it for a vlog, so last year actually for Christmas, so you could watch that. But the book is just so cool. It literally just looks like an IKEA catalog. You have different furniture, and then the text that would normally like describe the furniture is the text of the book. So it's a very quick read. Like only 2/3 of the page actually are text, and the font is enormous, so you can read it very quickly. But this is a horror novel, so if you're not into that, maybe not. And content warning for gore, because there was a lot of gore. But it is a horror novel. Like I said, set in an IKEA knockoff, I think called Irsk? Something like that. Anyway, we are following the main character who's an employee in the store, but she really doesn't like it. She wants to move to a different store because this one's like far away from work or from home or something, and she's about to be transferred, but she really needs to get in good graces of her manager, who really doesn't like her. So when the manager asks a couple of employees to stay overnight because there's been some weird vandalism happening in the store, she says yes. And a lot of death and a lot of gore ensue, because is it haunted? Is there creepy people there? What's happening? You'll find out. But it is a great story. Again, could have probably done with a little bit more pages. I really enjoyed my time. I am a bit of a horror newbie, so if you're like a veteran, I wouldn't maybe be scared by it. But as a horror newbie, I've completely enjoyed it. I thought it was a great experience and I would highly recommend it. Next up, we have Malamander by Thomas Taylor, which sits at 304 pages, but it's a middle grade, so you definitely can read it way quicker than that. I read Malamander for the Believe-a-thon, Read-a-thon, which I'm gonna link my vlog here. Malamander was my favorite book that I read there. It's, like I said, middle grade, set in this small town near the sea, and we follow the main character, Herbie, who's a lost and founder. What does that mean? Well, He lives in a hotel and he's the man manning the Lost and Found. He's only 12 though, so it's all child labor. One day, there's this girl that comes to the hotel and she says that she's the baby that was found about 12 years ago in a room with her parents nowhere in sight, and she thinks that she's a lost thing, so Herbie, the Lost and Founder, should be able to help her find her parents. And then there's monsters, there's shenanigans, everything ensues. It's brilliant. If you don't want a more intense read, like I feel like most of these are, you can definitely pick up Malamander if you're into middle grade. It's such a quick, wonderful read. I absolutely loved it. I'm not a biggest fan of middle grade. I don't know that much about it, but I loved Malamander and I highly recommend it even to adults because it didn't speak down to its audience. It really was a great read. Alright, now a little bit of change in... just change. It's just a change. We have Sadie by Courtney Summers. This book is 308 pages long. I read it as an audiobook, which was a very quick way, and it's a very impactful story, but definitely on the more adult side. But Sadie tells us a story of this girl called Sadie who went missing, and there's this local podcaster that kind of takes on the story and recounts what happened in leading up to Sadie's disappearance and kind of tries to figure out where did Sadie go. Content warning for sexual assault. That's the one I remember. I don't remember if there were any others, but be careful. This book hits on some really, really hard topics, and it's not a nice light read, but it's definitely a quick read, and it's definitely an impactful read. So I would highly recommend it, especially the audiobook was so well produced because the parts that are the podcast are being acted out in real time. They got actors playing the characters, and it just feels like you're hearing a literal podcast in an interview with someone. It feels really real, really an amazing experience. So I would highly recommend the audiobook for Sadie. I think it's maybe 4 hours long or something. It's very short, so I would really, really pick it up if you had time. And the last but not least on this list is The Best We Could Do by T. Bowie. So this book is the longest one. It's 329 pages, but it's a graphic novel. And there's nothing quicker than graphic novel. It's a bit of a unique one because it's a graphic novel non-fiction, and it follows the story of the author's family as they escaped Vietnam I think they came to America, but I really don't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was America, yeah. So her family had to escape from Vietnam to America, and it's kind of a recounting of their experience as well as their author's experiences. It really, really taught me quite a lot about the Vietnamese War and what people had to go through. So I would highly recommend it. It's a very impactful read, really quick one, like I said, and the illustrations are absolutely gorgeous, just so beautiful. And it's an important story, and I never really hear people talk about it at all. I just randomly got it from my library, but I would highly recommend it. Such a good read, really impacted me, and the art was absolutely gorgeous, so pick it up. But that's it for my short book recommendations. Let me know if you're gonna pick up any of these. If you read any of these, let me know your short book recommendations. I'm on track with I surpassed my Goodreads goal, but next year I'm probably gonna be in trouble. Put those recommendations down in the comments and let me know what you thought of my recommendations. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you could like, subscribe, and comment, I would so appreciate it. But that's it from me. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!